Hello, and thank you for joining Project Chimp this evening for our monthly webinar series. I'm Megan Hume, our events coordinator. I'll be moderating the webinar tonight, and here are a few housekeeping items. If you've missed any of our past webinars, you can watch them on our YouTube page directly or access our YouTube page by going to our website homepage at projectchimps.org. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, we will be holding them until the end, but you can submit them anytime via the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. If you sent a question in advance by email, I have those questions already. Today, I'm happy to bring you Alan Bergman with a presentation on chimpanzee personalities. Alan has a bachelor's degree in zoology from Miami University and a master's degree in primate behavior and ecology from Central Washington University. He has been a full-time caregiver with Project Chimps for 1.5 years and has been a facilitator of the Enrichment Committee for close to a year. Alan was drawn to chimpanzees because of their remarkable intelligence, which is why his main passion is making sure we have enrichment that challenges their minds and keeps them busy. Take it away, Alan.
Thank you very much, Megan, for the introduction, and thank you everyone for attending this webinar. I hope that you learn a lot about Project Chimps and a lot about the personalities that our chimps have. Before we start with the meat of the discussion, I'd like to just give a background for those of you that aren't too familiar with Project Chimps. We are a 236-acre sanctuary located in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and we are created to help these former research chimps live out their best lives. Our mission in particular is simply to provide lifelong exemplary care to chimpanzees retired from research. We work very hard every day, and that is always at the top of our minds with whatever we do. We've been here since 2016. This was previously a gorilla sanctuary, but we have since made it into a great chimpanzee sanctuary. And we've been transporting chimps from the New Iberia Research Center located in Louisiana. And we've so far transported 80 chimpanzees and have 77 that are currently in residence. You can see behind me, we have a wall full of pictures, lots of pictures, including all of the 77 chimps that we have here, and then all of the blank canvases that are for all of the chimps that we have yet to bring in, that we are expecting to bring in. Right here, you can see an aerial view of what's called our Peachtree habitat. This is where we let our chimpanzees out to forage and have fun outside in a forested area. It is split into two areas, the north and south Peachtree habitat, and that's so that we can let multiple groups out in one day to give them access to this habitat. You'll see the 5 buildings that are labeled on this picture are the Cedar Tree Villa, the Dorothy Jo and Tilly Villa, the Chimps Ahoy Villa, Harmony Villa, and the McGrath Family Chateau. And the chateau actually houses 2 chimpanzee groups. In each of these villas, we hold at least one group. We have 5 groups total at the sanctuary right now that range from groups of 13 to 19 chimps with males and females living together. These villas have indoor areas where they are protected from the weather and outdoor porches where they are still protected, but also are able to get, some fresh air and everything. Inside of these enclosures, we have lots of structures that our great maintenance team has worked to create, as well as a lot of climbing structures made out of fire hose or hammocks that they can use to climb or lay around on. We provide 3 meals every day for the chimps, consisting of fruits, vegetables, and leafy greens. Each meal they get a different fruit or vegetable, and they never get the same thing twice within the same day. And every day is a different combination of foods that they're getting. On top of that, we also give them lots of scatters that we just made out of nuts or cereals or different sorts of things that we can just scatter into their villas or into the habitat to encourage foraging behavior. Because foraging behavior is a very important natural behavior for chimpanzees. It's been stated that 70% of time in the wild can be spent foraging for chimpanzees. So that's certainly a behavior that we want to promote in our chimpanzees. On top of that, we also give them some food in our enrichment, our things that we use to keep their minds active. So we give them enrichment every single day. We give them at least 3 different types of enrichments, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and one in the evening. And they can be filled with different sorts of foods for them to work with, different puzzles. But this is mainly, it's used to keep their minds active. As Megan said, I am one of the facilitators of our enrichment committee here, so this is very near and dear to my heart. I see the intelligence that these chimps have every day, and I love being able to challenge them and to make sure that their minds are staying active and staying healthy. We don't just give them food-based enrichment, though. There are plenty of other things like experiential stuff. We have bubble machines. We can give them, we can play movies for them. We just want to stimulate them cognitively. We want to make sure that they're using their hands, doing manipulation with some stuff. And also we want to stimulate their senses, whether it's taste, smell, touch, anything that we can get them to experience. In fact, we do have some great experience that sometimes we're able to give them where we'll invite musicians to come and play for the chimps, and some of them really love that. All right, to get into the main subject of this webinar, we're going to talk about personality. I think we all have our own ideas of what personality means to us. It's not an unfamiliar term. Basically, we all feel that personality is what makes us us. You know, it's what sets us apart from everybody else. If we didn't have personality, we'd all be generally the same person, and who wants that? So everyone knows what personality is, but I'd like to give a few definitions, technical definitions, just so we're all on the same page moving forward in this. So the American Psychological Association defines personality as individual differences in characteristic patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving. And then the Oxford Languages Dictionary defines it as the combination of characteristics or qualities that form an individual's distinctive character. So, in short, what makes us us? So a big question is, do chimpanzees have personalities? And this is a debate that is still going on to this day in primatology and other sciences. People argue very vehemently on either side. Some argue no, and obviously I wouldn't be giving this presentation if I didn't believe that, yes, chimpanzees do have personalities. My feelings on this are that the argument that they do not, or that animals in general do not, is human-centric, and it's out of a desire for humans to feel special. And humans are special. But in my opinion, personality is not something that is binary in the animal kingdom. It's not a have or have not sort of thing. I believe it's more of a spectrum where humans are special. They're on the far end of that spectrum, I believe. And I also think that chimpanzees aren't too far behind with that. But you'll also see it with other animals. I'm sure many of you have pets at home, and you may have had multiple pets of the same species in your life. And you see different likes and dislikes that they have, different ways that they react to things. For instance, I have a dog, Patches, and he has some unusual quirks where he is afraid of raspberry noises that you make with your mouth, or sneezes, or bouncy balls or shuffling cards or sleeping bags. I think I would find it very hard to find another dog that has that same set of phobias. And you know, I love him for all of it, and that's what sets him apart. That's what makes him him. So it should surprise no one that according to Project Chimps, chimpanzees absolutely do have personalities. We see it every day. We work very closely with these chimpanzees, and it's undeniably yes to us. So what are some of the kind of things that help us every day to see the personalities in our chimpanzees? Well, the first thing would be their social actions. Social interactions with each other or with their caregivers. Not only are the other chimps in their group part of their social structure, but since we are involved with them so intimately, we also, as caregivers, become part of their social structure too. And so, what kind of social interactions do they have? Do they prefer to play with chimps and don't really pay much attention to humans? Do they prefer to play with their humans and don't care what the other chimps are doing? Some of them will love playing with both. And then there are a few that will, you know, they just prefer a nice nap. And I think some of us can really understand that sometimes. Other things with their social interactions are how are they interacting with those that they interact with? Are they playing with the other chimp or the caregiver? Are they grooming? Are they displaying and acting aggressive towards the other ones? Or are they seeing a chimp that might be feeling stressed out and offering reassurance to them? We see all those things all the time with our chimpanzees. And also another thing that really helps us see their personalities is their individual preferences. So how do they interact with their surroundings, not just with the living beings in their surroundings, but everything around them. So what kind of foods do they prefer? Do they prefer fruits? Do they prefer vegetables? How much time do they spend foraging for the food that they are provided? The scatter, maybe they say, I don't really feel like putting in the effort to get this, but maybe there are others that are going to try as hard as they can to get every last bit that they can find. And then how do they use their space? You know, what are they doing in the area that they're given, both in their villas and in the habitat? Do they have favorite spots where they like to build nests? Do they have spots where they like to nap, or a spot that they eat? How do they interact with the things that are there, like the hanging elements that might be there, like fire hose or hammocks, or different structures that we may have built in the habitat? How do they interact with that kind of stuff? And everyone interacts a little bit differently. What are their enrichment preferences? How do they interact with that? Do they prefer an enrichment that's rather complicated and requires a lot of thought process, or do they not want to bother with that kind of stuff and they just want an enrichment that they can just rip into, get their treat, and go take a nap or play with somebody else? Everyone has their own preferences. What kind of enrichments do they prefer? What do they hoard a different enrichment and try to get as many as they can? Or do they take their time with one, and then once they're done, they move on to the next one? And then also, how do they react to new things, new people or new things in their environment? Many chimps might be cautious, not knowing what this is, and they're going to take a cautious approach, wait for other chimps to investigate. Others might be really excited and really happy. And then others might get upset because they don't like change, they don't like new stuff, and all of that's okay. And there's so much more stuff that I could say, but just given all of these things that I've just mentioned, there's an infinite combination of all of this stuff that you can get, and that gives us all these personalities. That's how we can see every single one of our chimp is a different personality, and they have their own individual sense of self. Now, personality is an abstract concept. It's not something that we can reach out and touch. So how do we assess the chimpanzee's personalities? How do we attribute numbers to it? How do we quantify it so that we can actually look at what we're doing and see what their personalities are like? Fortunately, there is a survey called the Hominoid Personality Questionnaire, and this was actually designed to excuse me. It was designed to assess the personalities of large-bodied apes using the knowledge of caregivers or observers that were very familiar with those animals. So that was a really great thing for us to find and a great resource for us to use. It was developed in 1997, and it has been used in many different studies, numerous studies involving chimpanzees that have been published, and all of those we have also looked at and referenced in creating this study for ourselves. So this questionnaire is made up of 54 different personality traits or adjectives to describe the chimps. And the caregivers would respond to each trait on a scale of 1 to 7, 1 being, oh, they don't display this at all, and 7 being, wow, they display this all the time. So we slightly modified it. It wasn't very much changed, but we made the definitions for the traits more chimpanzee specific. And we took out one of the traits because we felt that two traits on the questionnaire were pretty similar, and it didn't make sense to us to keep 2 of them. Those ones were inventive and innovative, both very similar definitions. So we went forward with 53 personality traits, and we gave the survey to the care staff. So each employee that had been working with the chimpanzees, we said for 4 months at least. That way they'd be able to have a pretty good idea of what they know about the chimps. So if they're working with them for a week or so, you might not see everything from a chimp. You won't see everything from a chimp. They still show us things all the time after I've been here for a year and a half that sometimes I haven't seen before. So we wanted to give a good amount of time for the care staff to associate with the chimps before they start rating them based on these personality traits. So the care staff would fill out the survey for every chimp that they personally have been around for 4 months. And this here is an example of what the questionnaire looked like. So it would just give the trait and then a chimpanzee specific definition so that there was no confusion on what exactly you're looking for. And then the scale of 1 to 7. So for example, a sociable chimp would be a chimpanzee that seeks and enjoys the company of other chimpanzees and engages in amicable, affable interactions with them. An innovative chimp would be one that engages in new or different behaviors that may involve the use of objects or materials or ways of interacting with each other. And a protective chimp would be one that shows concern for other chimpanzees and often intervenes to prevent harm or annoyance from coming to them. So after we get this information, it was a very long process. That's a lot of surveys to fill out. So we got hundreds of responses. So we had to get that all ordered up. And after we get all that data together, we needed to analyze it. And 53 traits is kind of tough to analyze all of that all together. So we'd like to shrink it a little bit. We'd like to, see if we can lump it into groups. And that's what factor analysis does. Factor analysis is basically looking at how does the change in each individual personality trait relate to the changes in all of the other traits. For example, if we're looking at the traits, say, dominance and intelligence, when dominance is being rated higher, on average, would the other would the people that are responding to that also be rating intelligence high? Or would they be rating it low? Or maybe it has absolutely no effect on that as well. And then you look at that, how all of these traits compare to every single other trait in that same way. And what happens is this analysis will lump together groups of these traits into what are called factors. And those factors are groups of traits that change in relation to each other. And so they have kind of a common theme. So these factors are what we will call the personality types. And that's what we will actually use to look at the personalities of the chimps. Each of these factors are obviously linked by some sort of common theme, and that's our job to assess what is in common with all of that, and then come up with the actual name for the personality type. So we haven't performed this analysis yet. We're actually in the process of it. We're in contact with a statistician to help make sure that we are performing this in the best way possible to get the best results. But in some of the previous studies that I was talking about that have been done on chimpanzees, we can see that they typically have 5 to 6 factors, or 5 to 6 personality types. So those ones that are usually seen in those papers are dominance, surgency, or in other words, their sociability or responsiveness to each other, dependability, agreeableness, emotionality, and openness. So hopefully we are thinking that once we perform this factor analysis, we will be able to get hopefully 5 or 6, and it will fall in line with that. So as I said, we have not finished the factor analysis yet, but we do have some stuff to show for what we've done so far. So we have each chimpanzee's average rating for all 53 personality traits. And each chimpanzee has at least 3 caregivers that responded to the survey for them, but also a maximum of 6. We didn't want to just do 1, obviously, because there could be some bias with an individual, and we want to account for that. So we want to give the most accurate representation of what we as Project Chimps, not just as an individual, see in these chimps. So with our ratings for all 53 personality traits, we have something sort of like superlatives, like you would see in a high school yearbook. So I would like to share just a handful of those with you guys, just to help get you know a little bit about some more of our chimps on a more personal level. So the first would be our most dominant chimp. And that would be described as a chimpanzee that's able to displace, threaten, or take food from other chimpanzees. It also may express high status by decisively intervening in social interactions. So we have 2 chimps that actually scored perfect 7 out of 7s on their assessment with that. It means all the caregivers thought that they displayed this as well as any chimpanzee could. So that would be Kareem and Lindsay. And both of these chimps are very mature chimps who lead with support and gentle interventions. When there's arguments and fights going on, they'll just position themselves between the chimps that are arguing and calm it down that way. They don't need to get physical, although sometimes it does require that, but usually they can handle things with pacifism, which is really impressive to see in person. Kareem is always looking over his group. He is the alpha of his group, and he's always positioning himself in a way that it gives him the maximum vantage point to oversee the entirety of his group. He's always looking to calm each other down if they're having a tough time. Lindsay can be very protective of certain chimps that she might see as more vulnerable. So if a chimp just got attacked by another chimp and she wants to make sure that they're not gonna get hurt or anything, she might stand by them and ward off any other chimps that she might think are a potential threat or might be potentially disruptive. And then we have Samira, who didn't quite score a 7.0, but she came very close. Samira leads in a different way. She leads with more of an iron fist. She will steal food if she feels that she deserves more food. And all the other chimps are kind of just like, okay, yep, nope, that's yours, I get it. But don't worry, we do not just let her steal food and then those chimps don't get food. We always replace it with that chimp's fair share, so they get everything that they need to. Samira might just get a little bit extra. But Samira is also willing to throw her weight around when there's arguments or disruptiveness in her group. She'll swagger around and pant hoot and just let them know, hey, I don't like this. You guys need to calm down. So she does keep a certain amount of calmness or order in her group. Now to get to our most intelligent chimps. That would be a chimpanzee that's quick and accurate in judging and comprehending both social and non-social situations. This chimpanzee is perceptive and discerning about social relationships. So we'll start off with Anna. We have a lot that scored very highly, so I'm just going to show you 4 of them. Anna, her intelligence shows in her understanding of her group's dynamics. She is in our most recently introduced group, a group of 19 chimps, which is a pretty large group. And she understands those dynamics and navigates them really well to get what she wants and to relax and be able to do the things that she wants to do. Additionally, you see her intelligence when we're giving out food in the morning, and she doesn't necessarily come up right away to get her food. She'll scavenge around on the ground a little bit for the food that some of the chimps might inadvertently drop. And then after she's satisfied with that, she'll come up and get her food that she's owed. And that works to maximize her amount of food that she can get. We also have Noel, who's incredibly intelligent. Everyone, since I started here, everyone would say how smart she is. She really loves playing with puzzles and trying to figure them out. Loves her enrichment. And one of the things that really shows her intelligence is she likes to take things apart. Sometimes the care staff isn't too happy about that, but it just shows her inquisitive nature. I would have to think that maybe in a different life, if she were a human, she might be an engineer. Although I don't think that we have seen her necessarily put anything back together that she's taken apart. Jacob also scored a 6.5, and his intelligence really shows through in training. So we use operant conditioning and training with our chimpanzees primarily as a means of medical prevention. If they get injured or something, we need them to be able to show us an injury so we can assess how bad it is or what we need to give them for medication. And if we can do that instead of sedating them, that is excellent. So Jacob is really taken to training and he picks up on things very quickly. The main thing that he's been known to do is picking up laser pointer training. And what we do with that is it's basically we use a laser pointer and point it at something, and wherever it's pointing, he has to go and pick it up and bring it to us. This is especially helpful for when we are trying to shift chimps out of certain rooms so that we can get into there and start cleaning and make sure that they have a nice clean living area every day. Sometimes we are shifting the doors closed and some of the chimps might leave a blanket in the door or some hay or wood wool in the door, and the door can't close entirely. that would make it so we aren't able to go in there because it wouldn't make it safe for us. So we can just laser point at the blanket and Jacob will run right over, pull the blanket out, and he is incredibly reliable for that. Lastly, we have Emma, who scored just a little lower than the other three, but is widely known as one of our most intelligent chimps. And she loves her enrichment. She is extremely quick to figure out what kind of puzzles that we give to her. Any new puzzle, you can bet that she's going to be the first one to figure it out in her group. She gets very excited about it, and anytime that we're giving them the puzzles, she's hooting and hollering, just so excited to see them and get to work on them. She's also rather sneaky, coming up with ways to try to trick us into getting extra food. And sometimes we fall for it, sometimes we don't. But one of my favorites is that we'll be feeding chimps and in an area where they can be above us in a protected area, but we can't necessarily see where they are because it's not a see-through barrier. So we'll be asking for another chimp to come down, but all we'll see is a hand come down. But we've gotten pretty wise that if we see a hand come down, we need to see their face because it's likely Emma trying to trick us into getting that other chimp's food. All right, and then we have our most clumsy chimps. And a clumsy chimp would be one that's relatively awkward or uncoordinated during movements, including but not limited to walking, acrobatics, and play. So we have two that scored somewhat high, but not as high as some of the other traits have seen. And that's a good thing. You know, we don't really want to see a chimp that would score 7 out of 7 on clumsiness. I don't even know what that would look like, just constantly tripping over their own feet. But these two, Haley and Tabby, it's not too surprising that they would be named most clumsy because they're very playful and active. And you've got to believe that the more active you are, the more you're trying to play, the more opportunity for slips and missteps you might have. And we believe we are actually seeing a possible correlation between clumsiness and activeness or playfulness, because most of the clumsier chimps that we see in this assessment also have scored pretty high on that stuff, and that makes perfect sense. Our most playful chimps are chimpanzees that are eager to engage in lively, vigorous, sportive, or acrobatic behaviors with or without other chimpanzees or humans. So we do have Neil, who scored a perfect 7 out of 7 on his assessment, and that comes as a surprise to no one. Neil is so playful, he's such a happy spirit, always looking to play with his care staff. He will, you know, bang on the mesh to get our attention, say, hey, you're not playing with me enough, or he'll get a mouthful of water and try spitting it at us like, hey, you need to play with me now. And when we play with him, it's a lot of different things. We can race back and forth across the villa. Sometimes we dance around with him and he'll do somersaults. Sometimes we'll play tug of war with him. But what really makes him the most playful chimp is that it's not just humans that he's playing with, it's the other chimps. He's always looking for times to mess around with the other chimpanzees. And since he was recently introduced to a group of 10 girls that joined with him and his other male group mates, he has started playing a lot with the 4 youngest females that are in that group, just doing a lot of chase or playful slap fights, different stuff like that, pulling each other's legs. We see constant playfulness from Neil. And then we have Kavali, who also scored extremely high. And Kavali also is always trying to play with caregivers and playing with the other chimps in general, always looking for a good time. But what really sets Kavali apart from others is that he is totally fine having fun by himself. He likes to play on his own, just swinging from different fire hose structures, climbing up things, doing flips, playing with enrichment in different silly ways. We've got a lot of videos that our care staff loves to share with each other of Kavali just messing around and doing wacky stuff. And then we've got our most independent chimps, and that would be a chimpanzee who is individualistic and determines its own course of action without control or interference from other chimpanzees. And so the two chimps that most represent that and scored highest are Gracie and Noel. And Gracie and Noel, they definitely determine their own course of action. They don't really care what the other chimps have to say, where the other chimps are going. They're gonna do what they want to do. And this is most seen, much to the chagrin of their caregivers, when they are shifting into other rooms. Like I said, when we need to get into a room to clean. Gracie and Noel are notorious for staying alone on one room and saying, no, I like it here. I'm just gonna lay down, and I don't really want to shift today. And as frustrating as it might be for us, we recognize that sometimes in their groups, the other group mates might get a little rowdy, and it might get a little much to handle. So I think we can all vibe with them wanting to just take a break and have some alone time every once in a while. All right, so where do we go from here with what we have? First things first, obviously we need to finish our data analysis and do that factor analysis. But once we get that, what are we doing? One question that some of you might have, and it would be a very valid question, is what is this really doing for the chimps? How is this study benefiting the chimps? It's interesting, it's fun, but what is it doing for them? Why spend time on this if you're not going to do anything for them? And I will say, on its own, with this study, we're not gaining too terribly much, because our care staff, they've been with these chimpanzees. They know their personalities, and they don't necessarily need a analysis to tell them that. But it does help to reinforce what we already know, and it helps for incoming caregivers, care staff, to help to get to know their chimpanzees a little quicker. But the real value in this study is where we can go from here. This is a jumping off point. And we have a long-term plan that this is just the beginning of. And it will be used to look at other aspects of the chimps' lives, to compare their personalities and see what we can understand about the different aspects using that. So we have a few future studies that we are already planning on. One that we are very close to implementing already, and the first would be looking at personality and enrichment use. We want to know what types of enrichment are enjoyed, but by what types of chimpanzees. Maybe a more intelligent chimp might be wanting to use a more difficult puzzle. Something like that. A more dominant chimp might want a enrichment that they can hoard, so we might want to make a lot of a certain enrichment. Using that, we can know what to make more of and what sort of concepts to build on and make other types of enrichment that are kind of similar but with different tweaks. One big enrichment, one big way that we can use enrichment and personality is to know if a chimp or if a group is having a particularly tough day and they seem stressed out. Then we can know, what kind of personalities do they have, what kind of enrichments work with those personalities. Maybe we can just go get those enrichments, give those to them on that day, and that might help them, calm down or have a better day. And we are currently developing and we're very close to implementing a enrichment assessment where we're going to look at how the chimps use all of our enrichment, what we can do better, what might need to be taken out of rotation, what we can do more of. But on top of that, we'll also be looking at the individual chimps. So we can use that with our personality data for each chimp and understand that way. Another future study that we will do is looking at the chimps' personalities and how they utilize their space, both in the habitat and in their villas. So what's their favorite places to sleep? What are their favorite places to eat or play? What places don't really get used very much? These things are very helpful to know because we need to know what we need more of. You know, if there's a spot that all the chimps really like, but we don't have very much space of it, then we can say, hey, we need to get more of this. We need to put more of this in here because we know the chimps really love that. And by the way, we have this one thing over here that we never have seen the chimps interacting with or laying on. Why don't we get rid of that and put this stuff in that place? And that would also work with different structures in the habitat. Like you can see in one of these pictures, we have this tire tower. Well, how much do they climb around on or in that? How much do they spend time in the different platforms that we have set out in the sun or in the shade? What kind of things are they preferring? And that will certainly help us to give them the best experience both in and outside of their villas. But possibly the most important use of our personality data is to look at personality in the context of social relationships, how these chimps get along. Obviously, chimpanzees are extremely social creatures. They live their lives in groups, do a lot of grooming. You know, social aspects are some of the most important stuff for them. So if we can understand what personalities kind of mesh with another personality, we can better understand our chimps. We can better understand how to look at their dynamics, and certain things that would really be helpful with are, say, if we need to sedate a chimpanzee for a medical procedure. Well, after sedation, they're still they might be a little bit loopy. And we want to get them back in with the group, but we don't necessarily want to introduce them to the whole group because in a state like that, they might be a little vulnerable. So if we know what kind of personalities get along with the kind of chimp that we're looking at, then we can know what kind of chimps would be best to bring into their area first so that they can, you know, reestablish themselves within the group and be ready for when they are introduced to the entirety of the group. Additionally, it can be very helpful with introductions of our chimps. When we bring our chimpanzees in, we get groups of males and groups of females, but then we have to put them together because that's how we want them to live their lives, as males and females in one group. But introductions can be very difficult and they can be stressful for the chimps. They can sometimes not work. Fortunately, we've been very successful with all of our introductions so far. We've gotten all of our groups together and living very well. But that doesn't mean that we can't improve on the way that we do stuff. And if we can use the personality and social relationships to understand what personalities go well with each other, we might be able to say, okay, we want to introduce the group now. This chimp is dominant and this chimp is submissive. If we put those together first, maybe they'll get along really well. And then maybe we can take two playful chimps that get along with each other, that would get along with each other, put them in and start adding in chimps that we think will best mesh with the group as it is. And then by the time we might get to a chimp that we're more concerned might cause some disruptions, you've already got a very large group that's together and somewhat used to each other that might help mitigate any potential stressors that would happen with an introduction. And that is all I have for you guys. I thank you very much for listening in on this webinar, and I'm happy to take any questions that you guys might have.
Thank you, Alan. That was fantastic. For anybody else who has questions, down at the bottom of your screen, you have a little Q&A icon and you can shoot those in anytime. We've got some great ones coming in. First question, are there any systematic differences between the HPQ scores of your chimps and the values observed by ethologists among wild chimps?
That's very interesting, and I can't necessarily say that there are, but I can say that typically in studies that involve chimps in sanctuaries or zoos versus chimps in the wild, there are some differences. They have differences in their upbringing. Obviously, our chimps, many of them have lived their whole lives before now in a laboratory setting, and that'll change their personalities. Because our experiences change our personalities. We're not the same people that we necessarily used to be, and that's because of our experiences, and it's the same thing with the chimps. So I would say that I believe you would see differences, but I can't necessarily say 100% that you would.
Excellent. Next question. Do you think it's possible that some of the chimps' personalities have been affected by their previous experiences before that they came to the sanctuary? And if so, have you observed any negative traits or abnormal behaviors?
Yes, like I said in the previous answer, I do believe that their previous experiences kind of govern who they are, what their personalities are. Our previous experiences certainly affect what our fears or ambitions or what makes us laugh. So definitely, I would say that previous experiences affect stuff, and there are certain negatives that come from being in situations, such as there are some chimps that don't want to go outside. We give them access to the habitat and we give them the choice to go to the habitat, but they choose to stay inside because they're more familiar with a indoor setting than going out in the trees and the grass. So I think that there are some potentially negative ways that their experiences may have affected their personalities, just like in humans or other animals, their negative experiences would change the way that they are going forward.
All right, thanks. Here's another one. You have a rather young group of chimps compared to some other sanctuaries. Will you be looking for personality changes as they age and looking long term?
That is an excellent question, and I am kind of kicking myself for not mentioning this in my webinar, because yes, that is a fantastic question. And actually, we started this study before we put the chimps in our 19 chimpanzee group together. So those are all of their personalities before they were introduced to members of the other sex. So what we are intending to do, we're going to give them a little bit more time to get used to each other and kind of settle down as a group. But once that happens, we're going to do these surveys again. And we're going to look at how their personalities may have changed once they've been given a new situation in which they're living with males and females and a bigger group, rather than just living just with females or just with males. So thank you for that question. Thank you very much.
Great. And we are getting lots of just positive comments of people saying nice job and well done, Alan. A lot of people have enjoyed your presentation. Here's another question coming in. When you have musicians in for enrichment, do the chimps tend to show a preference? Do they like fast, gentle, quiet, loud?
I can't necessarily speak to that. I know that for one of my enrichments, I played on the radio a Beyonce song, and one of our chimps, Lance, really started bang along on the mesh to the beat. Now, I don't know if that was incidental or if he wanted to really get down with that, but I like to think that he did. But we do have chimps that have been very happy to hear the live music. But I haven't experienced that too many times, so I don't have the experience to say that I feel they prefer one thing over another.
Okay. A couple questions. Do the chimps all get scores on each of the factors? Would you consider expanding your research to other sanctuaries? And do you plan on publishing your work?
I'm sorry, could you say the beginning of that again? It kind of cut off.
Do the chimps all get scores on each of the factors?
Yes, each of those factors, we will then take the scores from each of those, each of the traits within that factor, and we'll average that together, and that will give us the score within that. And the factors load in, the traits will load into the factor at different strengths, so we'll take those strengths into account to know what percentage of the overall score should be represented by that specific trait. And yes, I would absolutely welcome speaking with other sanctuaries if they'd like to pursue this kind of study as well. I think that, you know, working together is the best thing possible because we're all working for the same thing. We all want the best for our chimps, and I would love to affect as many chimps positively as I can. As far as publication goes, I certainly would not say no to that, but for right now, my main focus is just using this to affect our chimps in the best way possible and how to make our chimps' lives the best. But moving forward past that, sure, yeah, if we find some really good information, I would be absolutely thrilled to publish.
Nice. Somebody here is interested in whether or not it's possible to have a group without a dominant male.
Oh, absolutely. Now in our groups, our 5 groups, we do have dominant males, but I can speak that I do have previous experience at another sanctuary, Chimpanzee Sanctuary Northwest, and they have a group with 7 different chimpanzees and only 1 male. And that male, you know, he's not too interested in being an alpha, and he doesn't necessarily understand how to be an alpha. But they do have a female in that group. Her name is Jamie, and she really takes over, and she's a very impressive alpha female. So I have certainly seen that before.
Nice. Last question. What percentage of chimps choose not to go outside?
I would say it's a very low percentage. I think we may have 3 chimpanzees out of 77 right now that still don't really like to go outside. We have recently, you know, made some strides with certain chimps in the past year, and we do have one of our chimps that is starting to venture out a little bit, but taking it step by step. Just going a little bit further each day, and we are always so happy to share with each other when we see them taking those steps, because that means that they're, you know, that they're moving past their fears and they're finding out more about their world and more stuff that they can use to enjoy their time here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alan, for the questions. If you
No
do
problem.
think of any other questions, you can submit them to us at events@projectchimps.org. It costs $22,000 a year per chimp to take care of all of their food, housing, medical care, and enrichment activities. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar series. If you fell in love with the chimp's personality during tonight's webinar, please go to our website, projectchimps.org, and consider a chimp sponsorship. Monthly sustaining support directly helps our chimpanzee care program. These also make great gifts. You can catch us next month, 3rd Thursday at 5 p.m. for our next webinar. You can watch all of our past webinars on our YouTube channel. Until then, thank you for your continued support of the chimps. We couldn't do it without you.